Let's go straight away to my first guest, the former government minister, former MP and Brexit Party MEP as well, of course, Ann Widdecombe. Good afternoon, Ann.
Good afternoon, Kevin.
Now, I'd like to talk about what's happened to Margaret Thatcher's statue, unveiled yesterday in her hometown of Grantham. Within hours, it was vandalised, people throwing eggs at it. The man in the frame for throwing eggs is 59 years old. You'd think he might want to try to start to act his age, but there you are. But before we get to that, let's and try to assess why it is that people hate Margaret Thatcher so much. Let's talk about her achievements. As I just said, she was a colossus of 20th century politics who arguably took an old-fashioned and stale Great Britain and turned it into a modern country fit for the 21st century. She was a remarkable woman, the first female Prime Minister, and a remarkable politician who did great things for this country. Can you assess what you feel her achievements were, Anne?
Well, I think her achievements are outstanding, and you've mentioned the domestic achievements at home. But don't forget, she played a huge role on the world stage, along with Reagan and Gorbachev, in getting rid of communism. And it was not for nothing that she was re-elected so often. And when she became the first female Prime Minister, we tend to forget that it was only a couple of years after the passing of the Equal Opportunities Act. She didn't have any help at all to get there. There were no special privileges because she was a woman. She got there by sheer grit, determination and ability. And what she did, there are still people to this day who will say to me in casual conversation, oh, my parents were able to buy their own home because Margaret Thatcher made it possible. You know, she understood what it was like to come from a normal, hard-working home, and she backed those people all her life.
So why do you think, I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, Margaret Thatcher was not only a towering politician, she was actually necessary for this country. At the point she took over, we were in a terrible mess, an era of constant militant strikes for no real reason except to disrupt this country. She saw that union power was going to literally destroy this country, and she took the unions on and she won. Yes, there were some very unpleasant scenes during that conflict, particularly with the miners' strike, and of course we feel sorry for mining communities who had the mines in the middle of their towns closed down, and the communities suffered terribly. But that was an economic fact. Coal mining was not paying. As Margaret Thatcher pointed out at the time, she could import coal from Poland for something like a quarter of the cost. So we couldn't carry on like that, and frankly the miners were led down a bad path by their extremely militant communist leader Arthur Scargill. So even the miners' strike was necessary. So this is the point about Margaret Thatcher. She was the right woman at the right time, wasn't she?
And she got it so completely right on the mines that, of course, what we forget is Labour governments also closed mines. I mean, they were not profitable. And she had to take a decision in the interests of the economy as a whole. The big achievement was to curb trade union power, but by that time she had actually the whole country behind her. I mean, you know, if you actually analyse her vote, an awful lot of it came from what we used to call C2s, blue-collar workers,
yes.
Because they had enough. They weren't allowed to work. You know, they were being compelled to strike action or being laid off or whatever it might be. So, yes, she was a terrific Prime Minister in so many ways. But, of course, because she was so single-minded and because she was so determined, she also made a huge number of enemies, and some people from those communities that were forced into change, which was going to come upon them whether they wanted it or not. They were forced into change, and they see her as the cause of it. But let me just say very quickly about that 59-year-old, not only is it time he grew up, but he must be prosecuted. I mean, he has actually committed criminal damage, been filmed committing criminal damage. If he isn't prosecuted, the message will be, well, we can all go round damaging statues that we don't like.
She seems to have become, we're going to have to tie it up in just a second, Anne, but Margaret Thatcher seems to have become a kind of pantomime villain for modern left-wingers who don't even remember her. She's become some kind of symbol of hatred for all people on the left. And as I say, I always thought, yes, she was brusque. Yes, she said exactly what she thought. And by the way, how refreshing was that, considering the way today's politicians behave. But I always thought she was also a woman of compassion who understood the working man and woman in this country. And so, as I say, I think she's unfairly picked upon by these people who just use her as a hate figure. And for God's sake, this is her hometown. She's the first female Prime Minister in this country's great history. She was a 4 times Prime Minister, a colossus of politics. She deserves a damn statue in her hometown, doesn't she?
Absolutely. There's no question about that. And she was entirely, as I say, on the side of the working class home. She enabled people who never thought they'd be part of the property market to buy. She made sure that waitresses in a boardroom were as likely to have shares as the director. She made sure that children from very poor homes could get access to the top fee-paying schools if they were bright enough. And that was because she really wanted to level up. That is what I call levelling up. Also,
she knew how to handle the EU, didn't she?
Well, largely she knew how to handle EU. She picked weak in places and bequeathed rather a lot of problems to her successor.
But there was well, okay, we're trying to praise her here, Anne. There was the famous...
No, but I'm being realistic.
No, I know. But she didn't take any nonsense from them. Do you remember the famous no, no, no speech?
I shouldn't take any nonsense from anybody. And that was her great strength.
So you must have known her, Anne. Last question. What was she like socially? Did you like her as a person?
I always admired Mrs. Thatcher, but she had grown, by the time I joined Parliament, it was only 3 years before she was deposed, she had grown a bit remote, not because she was grand, not at all, but because she was very focused on what she was trying to do, and that was what mattered to her, you know, and the fripperies and the frivolities, if you like, of politics, she had no interest in at all.
Another reason to admire her, if you ask me. Anne, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time.